Coming up on All About Android, it's me, Jason Howell, my co-host Win Tui Dao, and our guest Duncan Jaffrey from Ozdroid.net. This is our episode where we give you some of our predictions for what we expect to see at Google I/O. That's right, Google I/O starts tomorrow at the time of this recording anyways. Also, we talk a little bit about Passkey, a little bit more about Passkey because it's materializing. It's becoming a much bigger effort and more official. The Sharp Aquos R7 is a smartphone with a honking huge camera on it. Motorola might have a rollable in the works. We talk a little bit about that. And Google I/O Pinball. You're not going to miss out on your opportunity to play that because it's a lot of fun. Plus your email and a whole lot more next on All About Android.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of All About Android is brought to you by IT Pro TV. IT Pro TV has everything you need to level up your IT skills while you enjoy the journey. Visit itpro.tv/allaboutandroid for an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions for the lifetime of your active subscription when you use code AAA30 at checkout. Hello and welcome to All About Android. This is episode 577, recorded on Tuesday, May 10th, 2022. Your weekly source for latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Jason Howell.
And I'm Win Tui Dao.
Win, I love your backdrop. It looks so good.
There's all that effort I spend at my house to get my setup and my lighting. And look at this lighting in this backdrop in this hotel room.
I know. Hotel room, because you are in the Bay Area here for Google I/O, right?
I am.
And our plan, so just to peel back the curtain, some of you are watching, some of you are listening, so you can't see anything, so you aren't clued into certain things. So, well, you know what? Before we get into this, we need to bring in our guest, because that would be rude not to. Our guest today, Duncan Jaffrey, Ozdroid.net, all-around awesome guy. We'd love to bring you on, especially around moments like this when there's lots of announcements that are coming up or have already happened from Google. It's good to have you back, Duncan.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me. It's always great to be on.
Absolutely. All right. I didn't want to leave you out, not having been introduced into the show. That would be rude. So I'm happy to have you here. As you can see, Ron is not here. Ron is out. He's feeling under the weather, so he's not here. If you're listening and not watching, then you can't tell that I'm not at the studio, right? You probably can hear the difference. We were originally going to have Win come into the studio, and her and I were going to be in person. Ron was going to be on Zoom, and it was going to be a big celebration, like, yay, Win's in the studio. But last Friday, I got a positive COVID test. And so I'm actually calling in from my little COVID cave, which is essentially my younger daughter's bedroom. And so if you aren't watching the video stream, definitely check it out just to see my awesome podcast studio for the week. This is where I'm coming at you live all week long, is from this room. And then Win, unfortunately, that means you're not in the studio because they wanted to be really careful, abundance of caution and all that. So you're calling in from your hotel room in the Bay Area, and like we were saying, it looks really good.
Yeah, I might just have to steal this. I borrowed the mic, and apparently I sound better on this mic. So I'm just going to steal all this and bring it back home to Colorado with me, which means I'll probably have to check it bag. But yeah, no, this is probably the most interesting background I could ever hope to have, and brilliant, natural lighting. So
I know.
Yeah.
Brilliant for as long as that natural lighting is there. We'll find out in an hour and 15 minutes how it looks.
Be ducking off, turning on the lights. Sorry.
Yeah,
so anyway,
yeah.
That happens.
But that's okay.
I think we should thank your daughter, Jason.
What's that?
We should thank your daughter for giving up her bedroom for the good of Twit for the week.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Hey, I have to say, like I said, tested positive on Friday. Friday and Saturday felt pretty awful. And it was just me and my older daughter, and, my older daughter's bedroom is just down the hallway. And so I had this room, she had that room. Then on Sunday, my younger daughter tested positive. So then she joined the crew. So then it's her and I shacked up in this room, basically. And, we're always kind of going back and forth between the two bedrooms and everything. And it's been a pretty cozy cave to hide out in and recover. And watch, lots of stuff on TV and read a little bit and now produce shows. So thank you to my daughters for giving me the space to do it. The setup is pretty humorous, though, I have to say. You wouldn't know it in the camera, but I'm literally podcasting from the closet. Like, on the other side of this camera is a closet with a dresser. The dresser is the drawer that my laptop is sitting on. Check out my Twitter feed at Jason Howell, and you can see a photo of what the setup actually looks like. That's the beauty of podcasting. It doesn't matter what it looks like behind the camera, just as long as the front of the camera looks good. And that's exactly what we got here in all scenarios. So anywho, it's really great to have you, Duncan, especially on this episode. We've had you on, I think usually when we have you on around Google I/O, it's usually like after the fact, and we've got like devices to show off and everything. So I don't know if we've had you on the pre-I/O episode to kind of do some prediction stuff, but that's what we're going to be doing today. So thank you for carving out time in the early morning where you're at. Or how early is it for you right now?
No, it's a lovely 10:35 in the morning for me.
Oh, that's not early.
Google I/O will be a different story. That's more 3 o'clock, but some things are worth it.
Yeah.
I think my normal beats are MWC and the October Pixel event. So I'm looking forward to our show.
There you go. All right. Well, then why don't we cut to the chase then? Why don't we get into some news and start talking Google I/O?
Let's do it.
So I was thinking about doing this bit that this guy on Twitter was suggesting to me, but I think I'm going to back out and just go halfway.
What? You can't go halfway on a bit.
Yeah, your news drop is so meta. It's like I'm waiting for the punchline, and the punchline is that.
Okay, it'll be this.
Is
then.
The waiting?
Well, it's kind of still
a work in progress.
Is it that obvious?
I like your style, Burke. I like that it's not obvious. That's the thing. All right, so it's I/O preview obvious? Time. Exactly.
What's
what are
obvious?
we even talking about anymore? I don't
understand.
Even know.
Never mind. Sorry.
Google I/O is, I guess, officially starts tomorrow, right? Today's Tuesday, May 10th. Kicks off tomorrow, May 11th, 10 a.m. Pacific. So if you're watching live, do know that we're going to be doing live coverage. Me from this room, Leo and Jeff Jarvis are going to be doing live coverage of the keynote tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern on May 11th. So we're going to, I'm sure, learn a lot of really great stuff tomorrow. Google's been doing a little bit of a preview leading up to tomorrow's event, the kickoff of tomorrow's event on social media. They teased out on Twitter that I/O is going to have security updates, going to have messaging updates, cross-device updates, and then they say new partnerships. I mean, obviously, those are pretty wide open, blanket kind of summaries of what to expect. Not a whole lot of, detail to glean from that because it literally could be anything. But I thought, we're ahead of the show and we're all excited about it for different reasons. Some of us, aka Win, are actually going to be there for the event. Some of us are watching from afar. But what are some of the things that y'all are most excited about? Like of the news, of the leaks that we know, or anything like that? Is there something that really has you excited that you're anticipating to see tomorrow? And Duncan, we'll start with you.
I'm well known on the show for being a Android Wear tragic. So I love a watch. I have stuck
is that
with
the watch
Android
4?
Wear. This is the Tick Pro 3.
Oh, the Tick Pro.
So
Nice.
from Movi. I find it the best you can get at the moment with Wear OS that doesn't lock you sort of more in that Samsung side. So I had the original Moto. And I've bought and worn every generation of watch, and every generation of watch. I said to my friends, "It's almost ready. It's almost ready." Last year at I/O, they announced the merging of Tizen and Wear OS, and I thought it might be ready. And we've had a whole year waiting for some hardware. And as good as the Samsung Galaxy Watch is, it's not that pure Android experience that I prefer. Mm-hmm. And so, whilst I've taught myself to never hope for released hardware at I/O, the rumors seem strong enough that we should at least be seeing some discussed Wear OS hardware many, many, many years into Google's journey into their own OS. So it's nice they might finally put some skin in the game. So that's my number one excitement.
Yeah. And I mean, the leaks have been very compelling. I mean, it looks like a really nice kind of premium device based on a number of the leaks. You know, the device that was left in the restaurant, I think it was, not too long ago, and everything. It seems primed that we're probably going to hear something about, definitely about Wear OS, probably about what Google is doing with the Pixel Watch side of things. So we're going to get some Wear OS. Hopefully we're going to get a Pixel Watch. Hopefully we're going to get the Pixel 6a, because that seems also like ripe time for it. We have in the past had an A series announced and shown off at Google I/O, although it's not a given. It doesn't happen every year. But I'm certainly looking forward to that, because the A series has been a pretty successful series for Google as far as their hardware is concerned. I think the premium phones get a lot of like the tech press, you know, ourselves included, but the A series is the one that probably sells more devices, all things considered. And so that's something to, you know, be looking out for and to get excited about. We'll certainly find out about that. What about you, Wynn? What's something that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so I think that we tend to actually get pretty excited around the developer keynote. I mean, I think the main kind of headlining keynote, which Sundar Pichai, you know, leads, is always like the kind of for everyone keynote where you have consumer stuff. Right. But I think we're generally very excited for the follow-up developer keynote, because that's kind of where the things that kind of make our experiences, not just as users, but developers thing. And a lot of it is around, you know, tooling and, you know, things like Compose, which is the brand new Android UI toolkit, which most people, I'd say, unabashedly love, myself included. So kind of seeing what's new with that. I'm actually really looking forward to seeing, like, always a tooling. I think what's really fun is that the tools team for the tools team on the Android team always works really hard to keep us happy. We're a very grumpy bunch when it comes to, like, you know, anything from like how we build, like what we build with and how fast it builds. Like those three things are pretty important. And so I think the Android tools team always has really crowd pleasing stuff. Like I think it's pretty easy to say that for developers, a developer keynote usually has one or two really fun things, whether that's just the ability to say, build UIs easier, being able to visualize things easier, being able to debug things easier, being able to build faster. If you're curious, if you ever ask like an Android dev, like what their number one gripe about building for Android is, the good chances are it's about build speed, which is basically when we hit build a thing and we actually get the APK at the end that you can install on a user's phone. That's kind of been historically the number one pain point. And so usually the Android team has something that tries to kind of mitigate these kind of things. So this is the kind of stuff that we're looking forward to, kind of things that make us, or that help us rather, build things for y'all better and faster. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to any Compose stuff. And I'm always looking to see what the Android Studio and the Android Tools team have, because there's always going to be crowd pleasing stuff. And I am really curious, actually, we talked about this last week about the predictive back. And I talked with my husband, who's also an Android dev, about this, and we were still speculating on what it could be. And I think as a consumer, this is kind of leaking into my consumer side, is like lately, you know, I think it was a joke like 3 or 4 years ago that they were putting machine learning on everything. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of curious to see whether the predictive back button will be actually kind of one of those things that is an interesting machine learning application, because a lot of the times, like things like machine learning, they're really great, and they tend to be kind of on very Google centric consumer things like Duplex and like Google Assistant. But it would really be cool to actually have a machine learning based tool that isn't, you know, you developing a machine learning model and sticking it in your app. It'd be something that is genuinely beneficial to us and might help us like make the navigation experience on your phones either. So yeah, I'm definitely more like dev heavy, but also all the stuff that y'all are excited about, I am too. But yeah, I want to build faster.
Yeah, I think from that perspective, that's one of the great things about having you on the show, because we end up getting so firmly locked into the what is the thing, what is the hardware, what is the consumery kind of announcement that Google's going to make at I/O. And again, I feel like year after year we recognize that we're doing that. And we go, well, wait a minute, this is a developer conference. At the end of the day, that's exactly why it exists. It's for developers to get the information that they need about where Google's attention is, so that they can make better apps, they can make better experiences that tie into Google's technologies. And it's easy for me to get lost in the consumer side of things and forget that, oh, wait a minute. Google I/O is 90% of all developer stuff, and it's like that 10% of like, oh, and by the way, we're releasing a new phone. It's called the Pixel 6a, and okay, here you go, Tech Press. Go crazy over it, review it, and everything like that. But for everyone else, aka you and all the other developers who are going there for its intended purposes, it has a whole lot of other kind of shining stars that are attractive about it.
Yeah, I will say, though, Duncan, thank you so much for saying that you love stock Android, because I know like part of being an Android dev is accepting that Samsung's great hardware, but not so great software is part of why I still have a job today. So it's hard to kind of, fault them too much for that. But I always love hearing folks that love stock Android, because I do. And it makes my life easier when I can just build for stock Android as opposed to dealing with why Samsung or insert other OEM here does 50,000 things weird. So that always makes me happy to hear.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted.
It's certainly cleaner. I love to embrace the fact that Android does give you the options, and that's why I celebrate the platform over more lockdown ones. But my personal tastes do run that more vanilla. I really enjoy the stock experience, and I have a way of setting up phones now that's quite easy, and third-party launches and everything, but it replicates that really stock clean feel. And I often slowly move with the times as Google evolves. On your point, Win, about looking at how machine learning can be easier put in for the devs, it just made me wonder. Google does love to do things with APIs, and so what might they expose there? And then in this day and age, what security concerns will that bring forward? And how does the relationship with community trust of Google extend through to use of platforms like that? Because I would agree that I would love to see more machine learning and artificial or general intelligence coming into these apps. But in this privacy-centric world, sometimes, which I think could be slightly overblown, it raises a new point. You can't talk to a PR agency now without them mentioning 92 ways how they're privacy focused. Do you feel anything in that space?
Oh yeah, all the time. Even from I work for Atlassian actually, and I've mentioned this before, but especially as being a company where our products are everywhere, we've had to deal with like very concrete concerns like GDPR and being able to worry about privacy and data retention and data erasure for users. And I think it's just put us in a habit of being hyper aware of these things and making sure that we're not doing things with, people's, personally identifying information. And even things like just being hyper aware of like a lot of the other things that we've talked about, like the Android 12 and 13 enhancements that let users know when something is being recorded, when something is on, when your location, when your mic, when your anything is on. And we become very hyper aware of it. And I think in general, it's not a bad thing for devs to be more aware of these things. Just everything that you do with the user's data might have impacts. So I kind of just take it as like table stakes now, just to be hyper aware of it. Whether maybe in some cases it's like maybe I don't want to say we worry too much, but it can make dev life a little more difficult. It can make making smooth experiences a little bit difficult when you have to obfuscate data or make sure that you're not giving persons access to data they're not supposed to have. It makes our data life harder. But again, like asking for permissions and things like that are kind of a cost of doing business, which I'm okay with. I might not like it in the moment at like 5 p.m. when I just want to get off work and I've got some kind of permissions bug and I have to fix it like today. I might not like it as much then, but yeah, I think it makes sense, and kind of hearing all the stress of the people that, are kind of my stakeholders at work, kind of worrying about how to match, and make sure that they conform to all these, laws and regulations and even like
and all that,
the sentiment. Yeah. And like even like just the average user's awareness is wider now. So we have to respect that. So I kind of just go with it. No, I kind of feel like more privacy and security in general is a good thing. The specifics of use cases can get kind of complex and and hard to handle on a day-to-day basis. So I'm not surprised when more things come up.
Yeah, indeed. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about security and privacy and everything. I mean, Google, like you said, table stakes. Not a horrible thing for that to be table stakes, right? Like, because at least that shows that it's gotten to a point to where it's so it's like that awareness is so ubiquitous at this point that it's important enough that everybody feels, or at least maybe we tell ourselves that everybody feels like it's at least important enough to really focus on to some degree. So that's a good thing. I'm sure Google will talk about it. I feel like I cut you off though, Duncan. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I agree that it's table stakes. Sometimes the discussion of privacy feels like Facebook apologizing. It's just something that they do. And I'm not specifically talking to Google there, just in general. I'd like to see some real action, something along the lines of Tim Berners-Lee's Solid project that he was doing with MIT, I think it was, with creating these data privacy pods where users house and control their own privacy data and then allow access, to that, rather than the app-based centralized approach we seem to have. But this isn't the Tim Berners-Lee security show, I guess. It's Google I/O.
That's all right. I mean, hey, we've actually got a story coming up next in the rundown that touches on at least partially exactly what you're talking about, Duncan. So that's fair game. Real quick before we move on, though, just some other things. Actually, Flo at Gizmodo wrote up kind of what she felt were things to look forward to expect and stuff. Some of the other things that she put in there, the Nest Hub tablet as a consumer product that we know keeps bubbling up, so we might see something about that. Obviously, a whole lot of more information about Android 13, which I have been running the beta on my daily driver, as you know. It wiped my phone when I transitioned over to it, and I've moved beyond that. It's all good. But one thing that I've noticed is that Android 13 does more in the realm of asking permission to do things the first time you run an app. So it's like, I had the experience of installing all of my apps from the start and setting them up individually on Android 13 Beta 1. And there's a lot of running this app, for the first time, wants to use the camera. Do you want to allow that? Wants to use location. Do you want to allow that? Getting those pop-ups. And I just got to say real quick, attached to kind of what you were saying, when that happens, like, and it happened on a lot of apps, it didn't bug me at all. Like it's implemented really well in Android 13. So I think they're onto something. They're going down a direction that I think is pro-user, giving users more clarity, more control over those things. And some people might see that as being kind of like bothered, like, oh God, I gotta go say okay to each and every thing here. But I haven't been bothered by it at all. I've actually thought it's done pretty elegantly, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, at least now I have a better understanding of what's going on in a lot of these apps when it's asking for my location or whatever. So, and that's just one aspect and avenue of Android 13 that I'm sure Google will talk about, kind of opening the door for other aspects of Android 13 that hopefully we don't know what they are yet. Hopefully Google gives some more insight into that. And then that's about it. The only other thing that I did want to mention was the Pixel Buds Pro, which this has not been on my radar at all. But now there's like these rumors. John Prosser tweeted Google Pixel Buds Pro coming soon. Michelle Rahman speculates that they could support spatial audio, Bluetooth LE audio, just based on the fact that Google has been supporting those formats recently also. And Flo mentioned that that's something that we could possibly see at Google I/O as well. So, who knows? Half of these hardware announcements probably aren't going to happen, right? Because we always expect they're all going to happen, and then they don't. But any number of those could possibly happen. So it's a lot of ground to cover during the keynote. So looking forward to that. Google I/O starts tomorrow. We will be keeping an eye on it, doing live coverage, of course, like I said, 10 a.m. Pacific tomorrow morning. And, Win, you're going to be experiencing all the fun firsthand. So lucky you. I am so jealous.
Yeah, I will report back and see. I mean, we'll see what it is. I think it's very fascinating for this to be the first kind of in-person, like actual non-Google folks being at Google I/O event since this all started. So we'll see how it goes. It's going to be weird. Like I think it'll be definitely weird to be back just from the state of things of the world, but also just to see what it's like. Because this is definitely not your average I/O, which is as much festival and spectacle as it is dev event. So we'll see how much of the latter part we have. and how much the virtual experience compares to the in life one or real life one. So we'll see.
Yeah, indeed. Cool.
I'll try not to be too many like celebratory tweets and instigate too much FOMO and being like, haha, I'm here. This is the best experience ever. I bet everyone's like so sad.
This is the best Google I/O I've ever been to.
You're forgetting the most important part.
Oh, what's that?
It's the merch. I've got a big hole in my Google I/O collection. There's no 2021 Android Bell, Android Mini. So,
I need to get one of those Mizzies. We did stop by. So we went early. See, this is me. See, I did get my IO22 swag.
It's all the merch.
Nice. Very nice.
So very nice. So I filled my quota for this year. If my husband's doesn't fit, I'm stealing his as well. So so there's me humble bragging about, or not actually humble bragging, just bragging about my swag. So I mean, that is nice. That is nice. We actually have so many, between my husband and I, we have so many dev t-shirts that we could never possibly wear them. I think I need to quote them or something and make like a canvas of.
There you go. That's a good idea.
T-shirts. I need to send you guys a picture of my lanyard collection from all the Android conferences that the two of us have gone to over the years. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'll have to post that on the show one day after I add my IO22 on it. But yeah,
I never had the patience to save my lanyards. They just always ended up in the trash. I was like, oh, why start now?
There's a whole community out there of Android pin collectors that they know these are.
Yes.
So if you'd like some future investment advice, buy as many as you can, wait 2 years, and visit eBay.
Oh my gosh. Brilliant. I will do that tomorrow. If there's a swag store, I'm going to go clean them out. Oh, I should say that publicly. I mean, I won't. I'll just buy one for me and one for my husband.
There's a purchase limit. They're onto you.
Oh no. What if I come back in like I guess I scan our badges. See, this is what happens with too much technology. They can scan my badge probably and know that I've already bought like whatever the allotment is. So
exactly. All right. So let's we have one more story in this top block. And we actually did talk about this a couple of weeks ago, I think. But anyways, Wayne, you got it.
It's made real. So a few weeks ago, we were reading up on an APK breakdown where someone found a string, which I guess I actually, in case you weren't aware, a string is not like a piece of yarn, but a string is basically any piece of text that gets displayed in API. It's called strings in dev world. So that's, if you were wondering what I was talking about, that's what it is. But someone literally found the text "welcome passkeys" in the Google Play Services APK some months ago, and now we have confirmation that, in fact, Apple, Google, and Microsoft have kind of joined together to support the FIDO Alliance and W3C common password sign-in standard that they're creating. It's called multi-device FIDO credentials. And we talked a little bit about this a few weeks ago about how basically the idea is to eliminate the kind of cumbersome ness of managing multiple passwords, which leads to bad practices. And there's a lot of great intentions here with FIDO. They want to make it simpler but safer. They want to make it ubiquitous and increase usability and make things low friction. And by hopefully making security easier for users to make users overall more safe. And so this is using public key or asymmetric cryptography. So rather than the user entering passwords, you're going to basically have these numerically linked public and private keys, which basically the software, the service, the authentication service will handle it for you. And so you have these collection of like mathematically generated keys, and they will be backed by one of these major platforms, Apple, Google, Microsoft. And all that you have to do is authenticate into that platform. And so so basically Apple, Microsoft, and Google have said, we're going to do this. We want to create a widespread, easy to use way for people to stay safe when doing authentication. And so this will be available on multiple devices. Any device that you have where you're logged into your, credentials backup of choice, whether it's one of these three platforms, on any device that you are logged in with one of these platforms, you can use as an authenticator. And you can actually, if you are familiar with or have used your Android device as a security key, and if you log on to, say, your Google account from a new device, you often get like maybe a pop-up on your phone that says, "Hey, you have a login attempt from some phone in this location. Or do you accept this?" It's kind of this same experience where you'll have your authenticator device, and if you are logging onto a new device on like some other platform, whether it's a phone or the web, you'll get one of these push notifications. So the difference is that rather than this being kind of part of 2FA, this is going to be your authentication experience. And what's interesting is that while these notifications, as you might use them with security keys to your Android device, are done through the internet, this will be done through Bluetooth. So you're going to have multiple devices that you can authenticate through using these asymmetric cryptographic keys. But you'll need to be on Bluetooth because what it's doing is actually looking for a physical, it's looking for you to be physically nearby. So that's kind of part again of the, this part of the thing about 2FA, right? Something that you know and something that you have. In this case, it's like, okay, you need to be there. You need to be there when this request pops up. And of course, it being Bluetooth is kind of interesting and might kind of cause some problems for like, it might not be as multi-device as they hope if you are on an old PC that doesn't have Bluetooth. What do we do there? But that's the idea, is to kind of convert from 2FA, which is okay, to this cryptographic, or asymmetric cryptographic based, credential system backed up to a major platform. And yeah, this is, again, going to be officially supported by Google, Microsoft, and Apple. And in regards to Android, this is going to be done through Google Play services. So the good thing about that is that older phones can actually make use of this multi-device FIDO credential authentication, even if you're an older phone, because Google Play services, you can just download it and then you'll be able to get the authentication through there. So yeah, there you go. Apparently last Thursday was World Password Day, and so they celebrated by saying we're going to kill the password. So, but there you go. It's official. All your major platforms are trying to make your security easier and maybe not make it so you have to manage all these passwords on different sites. So there you go.
I mean, any of the times that I've had, Google do that and had to authenticate or been given the opportunity to authenticate with my phone to log into whatever, I've enjoyed that experience. Like that experience works for me. So I suppose to that end, I would love to see a little bit more of that. What do you think about it, Duncan?
I'm in so many minds. I would love to see goodbye of passwords. So the people I have to support with, what's my password for this? And I look at them and go, how can I possibly know? A lot of the members of Osdroid have a health or a community service background, and we've been discussing this. And some people made some really good points of, they didn't quite put it this way, but what if you howl your phone? And yes, Jason, I've turned you into a new verb.
Okay.
And you lose access to the single point of accountability. What's the failback?
Yes. Yeah.
Because if that phone doesn't work, in which case your security is only as good as your failback point. And most people will say, it'll be a magic link to an email, which is simple and definitely something that a lot of people can use. But then email hijacking, we know, is a massive issue with people taking over people's email accounts. And then if you hijack the email account, and that's the lowest common denominator, then all of a sudden the security isn't as good as it could be. And then, as long as it was always an option, there are some people who are more technologically challenged, and I don't want to single any group out, but who may not be as comfortable with device-based authentication.
Yes, but for sure.
For myself, that always has multiple devices and these accounts set up on multiple devices, that couldn't come soon enough. But it's those finer points of implementation for a diverse community that I'd like to see.
Yeah, really, is it a mandatory thing, or is it a requirement, or is it an option? Yeah, it's a good question, because some people just are not going to feel comfortable with something like that. It's just they're too used to the password thing, as flawed as it may be. It works. That same password that they've used on 20 million sites, that works for them, and you could tell them a million times like that's very insecure. You're going to get in trouble if you do that too long, but it still kind of doesn't matter because it works and they're used to it and everything. So it's hard to undo that. But yeah, I like the idea though of the kind of like the Bluetooth aspect of it. Someone in chat asked if there was any NFC support. I'm not aware that it ties into NFC in any way, but I like that it thinks that they've thought about the fact that like this is a very closed location that is necessary. You need to be within that small area in order to authenticate. That eliminates a lot of external threats and really kind of makes it more secure as a result. So I like that as well. I don't know when we're going to start seeing this cropping up in more places, in more apps and stuff, but But it's interesting to me that Apple, Google, and Microsoft are all like, yeah, we're on board. Let's do it. That makes me think that we're going to start seeing it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit like, we talk about other things like messaging, where getting all these major platforms on the same kind of standard is a fight because, they have their own interests. Yeah. But it's really cool to see that in the interest of user security and also the fact that they're right, this kind of thing needs ubiquity. It needs to be scalable. It needs to be available everywhere for it to actually work. So in this case, it does behoove them to cooperate and coordinate on this to make lives safer. I guess when it comes to their bottom dollar and their bottom line, then whatever, let's fight, yo. But when it comes to actual like improving overall, not just user security, but also, all the services that, users use and that are hosted on these platforms, they need to work together. And I really like that a lot. I mean, I guess going back to, again, the single point of failure, that is interesting. I mean, if you're still authenticating to your platform that is holding all your FIDO credentials, all your FIDO public private keys, that's still a thing. And I think, you'll have one password rather than multiple. So it's not, I guess, unlike your one password or your LastPass or whatever your preferred password manager is. So, I mean, hopefully I can get my dad to write a little bit harder password than what he uses. It's not a good one, but I mean, it is definitely a step. And I think we talked about this, but it's interesting, like for tech savvy folks like us, this seems like NBD. And, if we feel uncomfortable with like the one point of failure, maybe we have some way of mitigating that. But there's also like, again, like the average user who may not be as tech savvy, who needs the extra assistance and who cannot manage the complexity or nuances that we have with 2FA right now, which is really who this is for, in my opinion. Just the average consumer that really needs a boost and really needs assistance in getting themselves authenticated and super secure. So I think I'm going to be of two minds about this for a long time, but I think it's a good thing overall. I think it's a net positive that I'd like to see. So
agreed. All right. Passkey, look for it. All right, let's take a break, and then when we come back, we'll get into some hardware news. But first, this episode of All About Android is brought to you by IT Pro TV. It's important when you're looking for an online IT training platform that you're getting the most up-to-date content, right? If you're learning information about IT that's outdated, it's not going to serve you very well when you're actually doing the work. So you're looking for that information to be up to date. It's also going, required for the certifications that you're going to be facing. So we're going to make it easy for you. All you need to know is IT Pro TV. And you've heard us talk about it a million times before. That's because it's awesome. In fact, they just released a new course, CompTIA A+ Core 1 and Core 2 series. This course is actually designed for professionals who support today's core technologies, from security to networking to virtualization and a whole lot more. CompTIA's A+ certification is an industry standard for launching IT careers in today's digital world. And in this course, you're going to learn about hardware, you're going to learn about operating systems, networking, security, and troubleshooting. It covers a ton of ground. We talk about how great IT Pro TV is here at TWiT, but here's a reason why. Here's that reminder. They have 7 studios where they film Monday through Friday. So they are constantly creating new content. Their courses go from studio to the course library in 24 hours. They're divided into 20 to 30-minute episodes, so it makes it really easy to binge, drop in on an episode when you've got a little pocket of time, that sort of thing. They make sure you're prepared for your exams. They have virtual labs and practice tests to help you get prepared, in fact. The best part about IT Pro TV is that you can learn and get certified on your own schedule, and it's always entertaining, right? That's just a huge part of the reason why people love IT Pro TV. It's actually entertaining to watch. You're not learning some boring thing. It's fun. May is ramping up for summer, and so is IT Pro TV. Their free Azure weekend is scheduled for May 14th and 15th. You can head to their website to get free courses. That's right, free courses and a great introduction to your next IT career. IT Pro TV is going to have 2 free webinars this month for you to check out. There's What is Azure Bicep with Adam Gordon and Wes Bryan. That's available on demand. And then on May 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern, all things cybersecurity with Daniel Lowry and John Hammond. And don't forget about your IT team as well. You can check out an IT Pro TV business plan and get your team ready and going with IT Pro TV today. Visit itpro.tv/allaboutandroid. You'll get an additional 30% off all consumer subscriptions, and that's for the lifetime of your active subscription when you use code AAA30. That's itpro.tv/allaboutandroid, and do make sure and use that code AAA30 for an additional 30% off for the lifetime of your active subscription. IT Pro TV, build or expand your IT career and enjoy the journey. And we thank IT Pro TV for their support of All About Android and for continuing to be so awesome. Thank you, IT Pro TV. And hope you check it out. All right. Coming up right now, we've got some hardware to show off. Well, not show off, but talk about anyways. I wish we could show it off.
I do too. I'm excited about this first story, actually. Super excited.
The bummer about this first story is like, when are we going to see it? I don't know. Maybe Duncan will. I don't know if we will, but tell us a little bit about it, Win. It is cool.
Yeah, I think this is fascinating because I think growing up in America, we always kind of picture Japan as being the wonderland, the fantasy land of not just, pop culture, but also electronics. But in the recent years, we haven't really seen much in terms of Japanese makers and smartphones. And actually, I'm actually taking Japanese lessons. And I actually had this whole conversation with my Japanese teacher the other day. He actually is a Japanese person living in Korea. So obviously, Samsung and Xiaomi, Chinese manufacturers, and also Samsung, a Korean company, kind of dominate the space in terms of, smartphones. And Japan, as a country where we usually kind of imagine, a lot of amazing electronics and innovation comes from, really haven't, had a lot to, I guess, celebrate or say in the smartphone space. But last year, there was a very interesting phone from Sharp, the Aquos R7, which had an enormous 1-inch sensor, a camera sensor, which I think was actually the biggest smartphone sensor of that year, which just beat out Xiaomi, which also had a ridiculously large one. And they're making a sequel to that. The Sharp Aquos R7 will continue to have this huge, look at that thing. That's amazing. It's a 1-inch, it's a 1-inch, 47.2 megapixel camera. And it has a 240 hertz AMOLED display, 6.6 inches, 1260 by 2730 pixels. And this thing is really cool. It has, for you camera buffs out there, it has a Leica camera lens. And if you're not familiar, Leica is a super high-end, super trendy, like all the really, really intense photographers that I know, or at least trendy photographers I know, use Leica. So it has a f1.9 19 millimeter focal length lens, super fast lens. Oh my gosh. And it has a lot of other amazing things like real-time face, body, and eye detection. It's because the dang back of the camera, the dang 1-inch camera is so big, it actually has 4x lossless zoom, but basically it takes that 48 megapixel image and pixel bends it down to 12 megapixels. It has 8K recording, like no kidding. And yeah, it still has like a nice 12.6 megapixel selfie camera in the front, in-display fingerprint sensor, and carries the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. We're looking at 12 gigabits, not gigabits. I always make that. I know what a gigabit and a gigabyte is. It has 12 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage, and comes pre-installed with Android 12. And I want this dang phone. It's only going to be offered in Japan, though, not dissimilarly to the Sony Aquos R6. But I think it's an amazing camera. And this is kind of what you would expect from, the Japanese electronics industry in terms of phones. And I really, 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 really want it. I want it real bad, y'all. I want it really bad.
Is it the camera that appeals to you most? Because what they're doing different here, yes, it's a huge sensor. But there's also not a full array. It's not like a quad camera setup here. It's like, no, here's your camera. There's like a small camera to the side, but that's just a depth camera. It's like, this is your lens, and this lens does everything you need. And that is appealing, right? It's like we would end up going backwards in time, right? It started with one lens, but it was always one really bad lens. And then it went to 4 lenses because each of those lenses had a different kind of thing that it was good at. And then now Sharp is creating is implementing one large lens that does everything. Is that kind of what this this is for the most part?
Yeah, I think I like the appeal of that because, to be honest, you know, I have the Pixel 6 Pro, which has like the camera bar, and to be honest, I really don't use the other cameras too often. So every time we see kind of a unique camera design, especially a unique flagship camera design, I get really excited. So for me, this is like, okay, let's try something totally different. Let's give you a big stonking camera, give you lossless zoom, and see what you can do with it. So I just think that's really cool. And also it's kind of, I really like seeing other competition, other companies rather, in other countries kind of participate and, you know, offer up, you know, new designs and new ways of making cameras. Because I know like a lot of us are really sad when LG, you know, stopped making smartphones, and, you know, like other of our favorite companies either don't meet our expectations or don't quite, you know, release what we expect. So I'm all for more innovation and more messing around and throwing darts at the smartphone board and seeing what sticks. So yeah. There you go. I don't know. I really like it. I love the camera, and I love what smartphones have done for not just like photography, but filmmaking and all that kind of thing. So I'd love to. This is such a big camera sensor. I want it.
I know, it's huge. It's like an eye. It's like an eyeball.
It literally is. Like, yeah, it is. So
Duncan, what are your thoughts? Because I know, here in the U.S. we never get devices like this, and realizing, you know, obviously you're not in Japan, but maybe your market gets more phone. Like, I don't even know that I've seen like a Sharp phone in carrier stores, or really, you know, in everyday people's hands. Like, is Sharp a smartphone brand that you ever see with any regularity where you're at?
I think it's just important this point to say, I hope you can get some sharp photos out of this. I think we've missed the opportunity to say that.
Wow. That should be their marketing campaign. Yeah, the sharpest photos. I'll move on. No, Sharp isn't a big, thank you, Bert, a big camera phone brand in Australia that I don't even think they retail here at all. We have a very vibrant international import market. Japan is literally right around the corner in the APEC zone, so they're not that far, but no one's that far with postage. But no, it's not a brand we'll see here or see often on the street. I do agree with Win from one perspective that I love seeing something different. That's what I love about Android. So this looks like the kind of joke image we used to see on spoof sites where someone would say, why can't we have a SLR camera or an Insta camera put on the back of a phone? And literally someone has waited, 10 years and go, here, I've done it. This is a full image sensor on the back of a camera, and the bump isn't that big, and you asked for it, and here it is. And I'm excited for that Android lets that happen. Personally, I'm with you, Jason. I used to write that I didn't see the point in having multiple lenses until multiple lenses got good. And I now actively move between zoom, normal, and wide in order to enhance the photos I'm taking. If, you know, I don't like zooming in on the screen. I know what that does. It doesn't give you a good image. So having proper optical zoom, a proper wide, and it adds to my toolkit of taking photos and getting what I need. I'm doing a lot of renovations at the moment, and, you know, in some places I don't have a lot of depth. You tap on the wide and you can capture the image you need. Yeah. So as much as I applaud this, and I'm very appreciative for a dad joke, I like the triple array cameras. Yeah. Well, I'd be curious to see what this one lens can do, like how much flexibility it's given. Because, I mean, also at this point, consumers are getting more and more used to having those options, like having some sort of a wide angle to turn to, or, you know, that optical zoom. And like you said, they're doing a 4x lossless zoom here. It's still not optical, right? It's still pushing in with digital. But if it's lossless, that's accomplishing the same feat. So that's two lenses that it's duplicating. Does it give the wide? Is it a wide enough angle lens to begin with? I'm not really quite sure, but I do appreciate the idea of a single lens that can do it all. And if it absolutely can, because people do have more of an expectation now. We've just gotten used to having all of these different lenses. So now you got to deal with that.
I will say, like, I did kind of mention where we haven't seen much in terms of Japanese smartphone brands. And I'm maybe some of y'all already knew this, but I know we talk about Qualcomm a lot because they are kind of like the majority of flagship smartphone SoCs. What I didn't realize was Qualcomm was bought some years ago by Kyocera, which is a Japanese company. Is actually Kyocera comes from Kyoto Ceramiku, which is like they used to make ceramics. And at some point, Kyocera bought Qualcomm. So even if Japan isn't making kind of like very user-facing, consumer-facing smartphones, a Japanese company, or at least a Japanese-owned company, I don't remember off the top of my head what country Qualcomm is in, makes the chips. So I just thought that was really interesting, kind of in contrast to like the end product of a smartphone versus Qualcomm, the technology inside. So anyway, there's your weird fun fact today from Wynn's Japanese.
Yeah, totally. I didn't know that. That's awesome. That is a fun fact. It's fun. It's as fun as the pink walls in this room. Okay. Let's see here. Samsung, a little bit of Samsung rumory news. And honestly, there's not a whole lot to go on here other than the fact that the Galaxy Watch 4 I think was a pretty interesting wearable. Definitely one of the wearables that I've enjoyed, although I haven't worn it in quite a while. But since we've been in the pandemic and everything, I just find less of a use of a smartwatch when I'm in the confines of my house. Like I really need to be notified immediately of that notification on my wrist. But anyways, the Galaxy Watch 4. Great watch. Samsung did a really great job with it. And we're starting to get rumors around the follow-up, the Samsung Galaxy Watch 5. Turns out that apparently the rumors are pointing to a possible Pro version of an upcoming Galaxy Watch 5. I don't really know exactly what that means other than some of the rumors were pointing to, I think, a 60% larger battery, which when we're talking about wearables, I mean, that right there is a big deal in my opinion, because people are always complaining about at least with Samsung or with Android wearables, complaining about the lack of longevity of the battery. So increased battery life on an upcoming Samsung Galaxy Watch 5 Pro. Apparently the classic model is going to go away. And so there will be different, maybe they'll be restructuring kind of the levels and features of these wearables. But anyways, I don't know. Are either of you excited about kind of Samsung's wearable? Duncan, did you get a chance to check out the Galaxy Watch 4? And if so, what do you think about an upcoming Galaxy Watch 5?
I never got to wear it, but I got to play with it. I'm always excited for a smartwatch development. I'm a 2-button and a crown fan myself, but the Samsung with their twisting bezel, I'm not sure if these ones have that, so to give you that crown functionality without a button. So I'm always happy to see the market move forwards. Battery life's always interesting. Unless I could get 4 or 5 day battery life, what I'm looking for is 24-hour battery life after 2 years. So I don't care what it does right now, but after 2 years, I still want it to last 24 hours. The more important to me is actually fast charging on the watch, because if I got up in the morning and got ready and then, sort of left the dressing room, I've got about half an hour maximum that the watch would be off my wrist. And so I've got half an hour to charge a watch a day without having to invent a new workflow. And so that's not something I've seen yet, is that a device this small packing enough wireless or even contact charging in to refill it enough on a short bathroom schedule. Sure, if your bathroom schedule is an hour, you can keep that thing topped up and without a problem. But if you want to wear it the whole night through to get all of that sleep monitoring and cardiac monitoring, because I do the heartbeat and SATs monitoring with this watch, which is really interesting information. I do the sleep monitoring. I've got the new Nest Mini 2 hub thing on my bedside table, which does the sleep monitoring feature, which is great, but it doesn't do your breathing rate or your respiratory rate. And so there's big holes in my data as I charge my watch for an evening. So that's what I'd love to see more than multiple days, is a clear 24-hour period, no questions asked, and better charging. So a short charge every 24 hours is enough.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Duncan, I have a question. This is a bit speculative, but I use a Whoop fitness. I'm not really a watch person. I'm a fitness tracker, but I'm not really much of a watch person. I just found that I've always stopped using them. But this Whoop actually has a battery pack that's external. So I know this would be very difficult for a phone, but I'm just kind of curious. The way that this charges is like there's an external battery pack. I charge the battery pack and slide it over this, this kind of Fitbitty type watch, and it actually charges on my wrist. So it could be like during the day or whatever. Of course, it's not a watch, so I'm not actually I'm not actually monitoring it. So the battery pack, I wish I had it to show, but it actually is a little plastic like wireless charger that slips over top, and I just walk around with it. I can sleep with it on. It's light enough that it doesn't matter. And that sounds absolutely difficult to do with a watch, especially, with any heat and safety issues. But what do you think of that? If you could have an external charger that you could slip over your watch, and of course your watch might not be as usable or visual, would that be something interesting? And I kind of just thought of that. Would that be? Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Rick.
Wow, that's so cool. I've not even heard of this as a way of charging up your smartwatch.
You're 100% asking the wrong guy, because I used to drive to work with my charging disc shoved underneath my watch, plugged into the cigarette lighter of the car.
Really?
So I could top up my watch as I drive, so I didn't miss out on any data. So yes, would someone as insane and crazy as I have a battery that he kept topped up to keep his watch going? Yes. Is that the consumer experience I think would move wearables to the next step? Not something with a display. I completely get it for the device that you have. But yes, Duncan the person would 100% be on for that. Duncan the technology critic would have a lot of words to say.
Fair enough. And I'm imagining you now driving with a charger tucked under your wrist.
I know.
That's amazing. That's
dedication.
Awesome. Dedication, yes, for sure.
It's like, I will not be without this notification on my wrist. Not for 30 minutes, dang it.
No,
I think that's a really good point, though, on like the limitations of wearables and the power issue, like to safely and consistently charge your watch and being able to use it as it should be. So,
yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off, Duncan.
No, it's all good. The other option is you can just take your watch off for a little while. In the old days, people would say, if you left your phone behind, would you go back for it? I'd say yes. If I leave my watch behind, I do go back for it. I do find it useful. I have all sounds on my phone turned off, and almost all of my awareness of what's happening on my phone comes via vibration on my wrist. So I live in a notification soundless world, which I very much enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've adapted your use case around how you get notified through your wearable. And I've had times where I've done that, but then I always end up reverting back to my phone. I too live in a soundless world. It's just I end up muting my phone a lot. And so as a result, like I'm less aware of notifications, but I've kind of hit a point in the last, 3 or 4 years, I kind of hit a point where I was like, you know what? I don't want to be notified about everything. Like, I'm cool missing certain things. If I'm doing something important, it's cool. I'm sorry you won't be able to reach me immediately. I'll get to you when I'm ready. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know. The idea of having a smartwatch that's constantly buzzing me about everything got less and less appealing over the years. And that's probably part of the reason why I just don't really wear smartwatches much anymore. Because I don't have that. I don't feel that need to know about everything right away. You know what I mean? Much to the behest of anyone who's trying to get in touch with me, and I'm sorry.
We have very different wives, Jason.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I'm able to. I don't know, but I get those notifications. I don't know what it is, but anyways. All right, Wynn, you have the last one.
Yeah. So for the last bit of hardware news, we have a few Motorola-based stories, and Motorola foldables and flippables and rollables are looking to come down the pipe. We're looking at kind of an update to the Motorola Razr. And I mean, I guess if you're like me, you had some initial like kind of nostalgia with the Motorola like flip Razr as a flip, smartphone. And it kind of very much looks much like those old Razr phones, but, I kind of idolized when I was first kind of growing up in the cellular world. But I actually got one, and I was a little bit disappointed. I think there's a lot of nostalgia there, but the actual, specs of the device and the way it works, it's kind of cute that it looks like the old Razr, but it definitely was overshadowed by the Samsung Z Flip 3, which is better in a lot of ways. And I think what's interesting is also just the design. Rather than relying on nostalgia, the Samsung Flip 3 is just trying to provide an interesting foldable. Is that what we're calling it? Flip foldable? A flippable? So
foldable. Yeah, foldable. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, flippable.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it looks like from kind of some sneak peeks that we have at the third Motorola Razr that Motorola is trying to take a little bit of a lead from the Z Flip 3 and try to kind of, I don't know, kind of get into 2022 realm of flip phones. And from leaks, it kind of, or rather from some speculative pictures, it looks like very much like the Z Flip 3, rather than having that big old chin, which is so kind of iconic of the OG Razr, it's going to have more of a squared off, more of a squared off outside with, rather than having the chin, having two exterior cameras, just like the Z Flip 3. And one will be a 50 megapixel f1.8 main camera with a 13 megapixel ultra wide, and then a 32 megapixel selfie camera on the folding display on the inside. But overall, less curves, less colors than the Samsung Z Flip 3 with just black and blue, and hopefully a flagship worthy Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. Supposedly they were looking to add the Plus variant of this chip into the third generation foldable Razr, but long story shortages, they're getting hit by the semiconductor chip shortages that everyone else
good.
is.
I like that. I appreciated that.
Someone does at least. And we're looking at kind of, very standard 8 to 12 gigabytes of RAM between the low and high end models, and 256 gigabytes or 512 gigabytes of storage. So it really looks like your Motorola Razr will be less of your OG Razr and more of your Samsung Z Flip 3 when it comes out soon. And to kind of go along with that, it looks like Motorola is also working on their own rollable smartphone known as the Felix. Not too much is known about it yet, except that it's going to be a rollable in the style of other rollables that we may have looked at, like the Oppo X 2021. Apparently LG had one had a rollable going on too, but LG's not doing mobile phones anymore. So we might get a look at a rollable we actually can get our hands on with the Felix. Evan Blast for 91 Mobiles reports that, it is in the works, but it might be at least a year away. So we'll see. How do you all feel about rollables in the realm of foldables?
I feel like more and more we're seeing these leaks and early kind of prototypes around rollables, but rollables haven't had their Samsung fold moment yet. You know what I mean? We haven't really seen the major mainstream device that this is the rollable that all other rollables are going to be compared against. So we're not there yet. But I'm sure it's coming. Interesting to me that this is compact and it rolls to be a little bit taller instead of
it's about a third taller.
A scroll.
Yeah.
But and Motorola might want to call it the Motorola Rolla. It's rolling. So
yes.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
ROLLA, the Motorola Rolla. What do you think, Duncan? Do you like the rollables? Do you think do you think Motorola overestimated how much people cared about the nostalgia factor of the Razr form factor? Because now they're just getting rid of it. What are your thoughts?
I think they may have, but first of all, I think Win has fixed the nomenclature. Forevermore, I have a foldable and a flippable. So thank you. That is definitely the correct terms. Now, on that, I am a foldable aficionado. So I carry two phones every day, and the Samsung Fold 3 is one of those. I haven't been without it from the moment I've got it, and I don't intend to ever walk around without having at least one foldable phone in my pocket going forwards until rollables are available. What I want is something the size of a normal Pixel that the screen can extend out. The extra real estate is fantastic. I use the foldable for my day job, and that extra real estate notification triage, it is, all jokes aside, is a business phone, and I get a lot of utility out of it. But I would love a normal form factor. When it's closed, the screen is a bit narrow and a bit difficult to use and not quite as useful as a standard width device, which is why I was excited about the Google news about maybe theirs was going to be a bit squatter and wider when it was closed.
Right.
But yes, I am all on board for rollable phones that extend out, and I'd love the UI to slowly grow as it comes through, and maybe Android 13 with its large phone tweaks that I'm hearing about may make that a reality one day.
Oh, that easy, like, yeah, everything kind of moves gradually with the motion would be great. I'm so reminded though, what was the very first foldable? It wasn't the Samsung foldable. It was
The Huawei?
no, it wasn't even Huawei. It was that random brand that that ended up being like repurposed by the drug cartel guy. What was that? You all aren't following, and I wish I could remember.
Something.
Yeah,
It's like
the Escobar. Yes,
that's it.
Escobar. The Escobar phone. What was that was based on a foldable phone. Escobar. Just give me 1 second. It was based on something by God, what was the name of it? Anyways, okay, I'm falling down a little rabbit hole here, but anyways, my point is that when we first saw that foldable, which was like the first like example, like, oh wow, they're gonna beat everybody else out to market, and they showed it going to that like folded out thing, it was so chunky. I mean, everything like on the screen just like froze and then like started kind of like blipping around and falling into place. And I always wonder if like if what we want is that gentle kind of like transition, that's best case scenario. Is that what we're going to get? Gosh, I hope so. But I can't help but think that it's going to be chunkier than that. That was
of course it is.
I will say I'm actually really, and so Duncan, we are phone twins because I also nowadays carry around my Fold 3 and my Pixel 6. I will say actually as a dev, and we've talked about this a lot about how there's a lot of unfortunately dev and baggage and antipathy and entropy when it comes to large screen devices. But hey, devs out there, if you have like device budget, get a foldable because you can test both a regular phone sized screen and a large screen all in one phone. I actually use this use the fact that it's both a large screen and a regular phone screen at work for a feature that I'm working on that I'd love to talk about sometime. But I actually think that the rollable as a developer would be a lot of fun to develop a large screen for, because I think what's interesting is like, how do you create a compelling experience when you're going from, oh, hi, the camera's on. You go from here to here, there's like a context break, right? Like an actual physical, breaking of your vision from like one screen to the other. But I think the rollable would be really fascinating as an experience, because I think we've had conversations like this, like how do we create a seamless experience for when the person is literally like unfolding the phone, whereas a rollable has the advantage of not only just being creaseless, but is not a context break. It's literally just the phone getting bigger, the screen getting bigger. And there is plenty of APIs and animations that should lend to this easily. And I actually would rather do that than have to worry about how do I kind of make, bring the user from the front to like the middle screens in a nice, interesting way. So I know I'm all for it too. Rollables. Yeah. I'm excited. I want to see something without a crease, because I'm that person that sees the crease and I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's hard to unsee.
It's there.
Yeah, totally.
Have you found a change in the apps? When I first got the S3 Fold, there was a lot of apps where you went from closed to open. It'd reboot the app. It just couldn't handle that transition. I noticed a small jump in the first few months, and now it's been static. And it may just be I haven't changed my apps. But do you find that you've got apps that are still updating, or have you now got that hard and fast? This one scales, this one doesn't, and it force reloads me.
No, I think that happens pretty often. And this is just kind of like how the sausage is made moment, where I think I know a lot of us have just kind of not forsaken large screens, but just kind of, more sausage is made moment. Basically, if the user can recover, a lot of times for a situation, not necessarily even a bug, but for a situation where the user can recover easily, like the example you're talking about, the app restarts, right? You're not blocked from data. You can continue to use the app without crashing or any kind of freezing after that happens. In that kind of case, I will say I bet a lot of people will just kind of take the hit and just let it lie, because I think often that becomes the time, money, resource compromise there. So I still see that in places. I actually don't use the front screen too often because, as you said, it's kind of narrow and a little bit tough to use. I like it for notifications, but that's pretty much it. But I would bet that I'm sure a lot of that. I wouldn't bet. I'm pretty sure most apps will still do that. And just to give you insight on what conversations around that kind of thing and those kind of bugs happen. Yeah, that's a little conversation you can have. It's like, well, if the user can recover and it doesn't hinder them from accessing features,
right?
You just let it fly. You just let it fly because there's a lot of pixel pushing. There's a lot of testing. There's a lot of like smoothing of edges that takes a lot of time and hence money that some people just don't want to spending time on. So that's a long answer to a short question of, there's still some janky apps, but I'm saying that as someone sympathetic, both as a developer and as a user.
Yeah. And I think until that can be incentivized, the widespread rollout will stay to people who see the value rather than choose it because it's a better product.
100%.
Yeah.
120%.
+1 to cousin of Ja in chat who gave me the name of the phone I was looking for, the Royal Flex Pi. That was like the first foldable before the wave of foldables. That was like the first one that came out that everyone was like, oh, we finally got a foldable phone. And it had all sorts of weird quirks to it. So anyways, I'm happy that the name actually existed somewhere. So thank you, cousin Oja, for finally feeding that to me. Apparently my brain couldn't find it.
Excellent.
There it is. Yeah, that's the Flex Pi in its glory, I think.
Oh my God.
Wow, that is a chunky beast right there, isn't it?
They had that
goodness.
MWC
That's
from
the way
memory.
you do it right there.
Yeah. Apparently that's how you do it. All right. We are going to transition into apps coming up next. All right. We talked about this not too long ago. This kind of the impacts of Google's billing system changes and kind of how that's trickling down into apps. Essentially, Google has this new policy around billing saying that developers who are offering in-app digital purchases have to use Google's billing system. Can't use their own billing system for those in-app purchases, those digital purchases. If it's a physical purchase, you can use your own billing system. If it's a digital in-app purchase, you have to use Google's billing. And kind of the latest casualty of this, whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. But the latest casualty, it's making things more complicated is kind of my point. Amazon recently removed audiobook purchases from its Audible app. And I'm a big fan of Audible, sponsor on the network, of course. And so, I've been using Audible for years, but I'm always purchasing credits. And I don't know that when I purchase credits, I even do that through the app. So I haven't noticed any changes, but apparently that's the only way that you can buy audiobooks through the Audible app now. And then now Amazon is turning off Kindle digital book purchases on Android. So if you're using the Android app, you can still use it to buy physical goods. But if you come across an audiobook or a Kindle book or anything like that, you now get a why can't I buy on the app link that basically explains, Google Play Store has new policies. You're no longer going to be able to buy new content from the app. You can build a reading list on the app and then buy on the Amazon website from your browser. Same for Amazon Music purchases. So just something to kind of be aware of. Probably going to see more of this as time goes on because Google has made this change that developers now have to kind of morph around. They have to do the calculus of the decision of, does it make sense for us to still sell and give Google this certain percentage of what we're making because we have to use their payment system, or just cut off purchases in the app altogether? And ultimately it's bad for the consumer, right? Because now if I want to buy a Kindle book on my Android device, I then have to open up a browser, or I imagine I could open up, like Chrome on my Android device and do desktop version and do it that way. I'm sure it would work, but it's more complicated. What do you guys think?
My unseemly was a very real reaction to this. It's so frustrating as a developer because I think so many times, external factors like this, like I really, every time on a project where we've had to kick out to a web browser, I felt like as a failure on my part as a developer and as my part as like of the product team, because it just, that kind of thing drives me absolutely insane. For as much as nominally we are a world built on smartphones and mobile devices, and I this maybe is just kind of really overly picky on me as like a developer, that kind of like context flow breaking and having to rely on the web, it drives me absolutely insane. Both as a user, because I'm really impatient now. I've learned that I can get things really quickly, and if I don't get them quickly, I get upset. But also as a developer, because I mean that also just causes certain complications, or maybe it makes things easier depending, but it just drives me absolutely insane. So having to make this kind of decision drives me insane, but I can understand that we're kind of getting into this space now where we constantly are talking about different companies pushing back against this kind of like monolithic our way or the highway, on the business side of things. So it's very frustrating for me as a user and as someone who tries to create like smooth, frictionless experiences for their users. It drives me absolutely freaking insane in all kinds of different ways. But I understand sort of the reason it's happening. Again, like whenever we talk about someone like Amazon or another big company kind of complaining, I'm like, yeah, but also I still don't like you. But it is so frustrating. When you're reading it out, Jason, I was just thinking, oh God, I want to do this too. So that was a very real reaction on my part. My old man groaning was a very real reaction, and probably I'm making that same noise next time I go to my Kindle book, try to do a Kindle book purchase and forget that this is happening. So yes, unhappy.
What do you think, Duncan? What are your thoughts? Oh, you're muted.
This is an area I have a real hard time sort of deciding where I stand. I do agree that it feels rent-seeking behavior on behalf of the big app stores to sit and just collect this 30%. But I also agree that this shouldn't be free. There is value that they add in the platforms and the stores themselves. There is security to be found by having something curated, monitored, and scanned. So that has costs and that has value that I don't have issues with them seeking out. The most egregious of this, I actually think, is Microsoft, who screamed from the top of their lungs about App Store being not fair and that want to collect 30% of the game revenue and want games platforms stores excluded. Now, I understand they sell their hardware at a loss leader, but you could argue that Google gives away everything they do almost as a loss leader. So I'd like to see a bit more there. So I really don't know whose side to come down on. This specific news infuriates me because it's going to make it just that little bit more difficult. And if I can't buy my 3-credit pack top-up for Audible when I'm wanting to crunch through a series, that will just be that other barrier. At least in Android, it should throw you out to the browser without there being an issue, so I can authenticate through the browser. And so it's going to be an annoyance rather than using Google Play billing. But I do get why Amazon's doing it, although I agree with Win. I don't like them either. Don't like any of the big platforms. So it's something that needs to be sorted. We need to get past this, and all these capitalistic companies need to come to a détente so the users aren't the ones left in the middle.
That's a really good point, though, on the kind of like 30%, kind of as a person just listening to that sounds egregious, but you're right. There is value there, and there is services being provided as part of that 30%. It's not for nothing. It's not strictly speaking capitalist greed, although there is a certain healthy amount of that, to be sure, probably. But I think it's a really good point too. And maybe also, again, kind of looking at the other side of platforms like iOS, like kind of a curated, streamlined, super seamless experience is what part of like what you pay for with the hardware, with the software, with everything else. So I think that's a really good point to make as well, that it's not like everything can't be for free, obviously. I know we've talked about that quite a bit. Right. So I think it's a very fair point to make.
Yeah, indeed. And then finally in app news, when you got the fun one, I will admit that Ron, had he been on this evening's episode, he was scheduled to get this story for obvious reasons that Win will now reveal.
Yeah, I was really sad. So this is for Ron, because for Google I/O, there's always some kind of like fun little game or fun little feature. And especially like last year, for example, kind of playing around with the idea of all the various technologies that Google has that we use in our daily lives, from Android to Chrome and Flutter and Firebase, which are kind of more dev-centric things, but they're there. They have all these little cute little mascots. And last year for I/O, Google kind of created a photo booth where you could take pictures with the different mascots. Well, this year we've got a little bit more of an interesting entertainment to be had with the mascots. Instead of just taking photos with them, you can play Google I/O Pinball. And yes, it is extremely sad that Ron is not here to take this story.
I know this is
because you can play Google I/O Pinball, and you get to choose which one of the mascots that you get to be. The game actually will kind of theme and change colors based on which mascot you have chosen. When I tried it, of course, I had to pick Android because that's just blame it on the day job. But you can be like the Flutter Birdie, the Chrome Dinosaur, the Firebase Fire, or Andy the Android, and you can use your keyboard to move the flippers around and play a rousing game of pinball. Ron, this story was totally has your name on it. We wish you were here to present it, but there you go. Everyone, play a round of Google I/O Pinball for Ron. And yeah, it's pretty freaking cute. I love it.
And it's well done.
Yeah, for sure. And I believe it's actually written for Flutter, for any of you Flutter devs up there. I think it's written in Flutter. So
yeah, built with Flutter, uses Firebase for hosting and for high scoreboard. And then, of course, it's a web app, so that's Chrome. Those are the kind of the three main aspects. And it's open source, so if you want to kind of see how they did this, you have access to the code.
That's actually a thing that Android devs are missing this year, because every year there's a Google I/O app. And what's really cool is the Google I/O app is a showcase for all of the new technology, all of the new techniques, all of the new architectural and design patterns all get showcased in the Google I/O app, which is also always open source. So it's kind of like almost like a goodie bag, I guess, in terms of dev techniques. We don't have it this year. Probably because it's not as big as last year. They might, and because it's primarily virtual, it doesn't really make sense to have an app, because the app would be how you schedule, your personal in-person, sessions. But definitely, if you're a Flutter person, I envy you, because you probably have some cool code to look at, and as well a cool end product to play around with. So definitely check it out. It's pretty fun. It's awesome.
I think, Burke, when you enter your initials and you hit return, does it show like a leaderboard with all other players? Because I think my understanding is that it's all synced online. I could be wrong on that, though. I'm curious to know.
They've missed a good opportunity. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but there's a really good platform for pinball called Scorebit. Scorebit.io is their website. It's the world's leading pinball platform for community for sharing scores, and I would have loved to have seen integration. But you should look it up if you haven't heard of it.
What is it again? Tell me again.
At scorebit.io is their website. It's,
yeah. No, wait a minute. That sounds vaguely familiar.
That sounds,
I don't know why.
I've heard of that before.
Strange. Yeah. I think I've heard of it. I think if you go to Scorebit.
Like s'mores?
Yeah.
S'mores.
Scorebit.
Score.
You're scoring.
S'mores.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. God, we have somebody that we normally have on the show that talks about that from time to time. Anyways,
I don't know. I did load it up, but I couldn't see the integration. It's a shame.
It's too bad. They need to build that in there. Oh man, missed opportunity. Super cool. Everybody should definitely go to pinball.flutter.dev and you can play I/O Pinball and you will have a blast. It is a lot of fun. Although I will say the ball moves a little slow.
The leaderboard doesn't work, I don't think.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's not working for you right now. You're putting in your initials and it's not syncing. So,
well, I mean,
it can't always work.
It won't even let me put in the All About Android ones. So, which I was trying to do here, and then it just does this.
It's like everybody puts AAA because All About Android is awesome.
Yeah,
that's why. Not because it's easy. Well, that didn't work. I think even the article that I read on 9 to 5 Google says that it can be buggy at times. So just forgive it. Everything has a bug hiding somewhere, right? All right. It is time for your feedback. AAA at twit.tv, 347-SHOW-AAA. We got to wrap this up before my voice completely disappears. When you got the first one.
Yes. And I would like to let you know, like everyone know, that I personally write totally bugless code. I've never written in a bug in my entire life.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
That's not true. That's not true. Dirty liar. So the first one is from Matt Bat. This is an email to the Android development team through the biggest Android bullhorn around AAA. Can you please, for the love of everything holy, pause screen input for a second or less after a screen rotation? Please, please, please. I can't tell you how many times I've touched the wrong thing just because the screen changed as I was moving my finger to push it. This often also happens on websites that suddenly jump around after they have completely loaded, and somehow I always manage to click on an ad. Yes, when that happens. Is that the intent? However, I have no idea how to fix that problem. But yes, if you could pause touchscreen input for a short while after screen rotation, that would be an awesome first step.
I know I've experienced that. I don't know that I've experienced it as much on screen orientation. I have definitely experienced it on like a mobile app or like a mobile web page that's loading. You know when it happens more than any other time is like a recipe web page.
Yes.
When you go to recipe web pages, I swear, like, and you start scrolling down to get to the recipe because the recipe is always like 2/3 of the way down after like all of this like really important information about how I decided to make this recipe. And as you're doing it, as you're scrolling, new elements are loading on the page, and then an ad appears and it starts to play, and boom, you just touched it, and now it's loading that ad, and it's a nightmare. I hate it. I don't know what the solution is, but I hate it.
I love how that's such a universal experience for people that look up recipes on the web. Like every single person who looked up a recipe on the web in recent years has this exact same experience. And I don't know the solution. And I don't know the solution either to the website issue. It is, it almost feels kind of like nefarious. I totally agree with you. It almost feels like on purpose that I've clicked on way more ads and probably driven way too many metrics in the wrong direction in my fair share. I don't know if I have a solution to this. My husband was like, turn off JavaScript, which is a solution, but will probably break the rest of the website. So I don't know. I mean, to be honest, image loading, to be fair, is a very hard problem to solve, to be fair to developers, but also like, yes, I agree. I would, the rotation thing is interesting to me. And I would be curious, Matt Bat, if you are finding that your app is rotating when you don't expect it. Whether is it rotating unexpectedly? Is like the screen locked in rotation and then unexpectedly unlocking? Like I know that happens. I often, when I'm lying in bed, will have my phone locked in portrait mode so I can lie down and not have it rotate on me. But if I watch a YouTube video, then of course in full screen mode, it automatically goes to landscape. So is it a situation like that? I don't have any other. I think barring that, I'm not quite sure. Just like the stupid recipe thing. Sorry, recipe websites, but you all know what you're doing. I don't really have.
They know.
They know, but I don't have any good tips other than that. But I'd be curious to kind of to understand more like what kind of specific situation you have with rotation, because I mean it could be something else that devs can in some ways mitigate depending, but it really. I would need to know I personally, before I can give any further advice, would need to know a little more context because but yes.
Wojo in Discord says, a simple way to avoid that would be to just lock the rotation into a certain orientation.
Yes.
And that's true, because then when you rotate it to the side by accident, nothing's going to change. There aren't many times that I want to go into landscape. About the only time I want to go into landscape is if I'm watching a video. And there's usually like on a YouTube video, for example, there's that little like kind of rectangle button that I can tap and that will put it there. Whether my device is set to lock into portrait or not, it'll still snap it there into that landscape view if I tap that. So maybe that's the alternative. I don't know, but I've certainly experienced it more with the recipe thing. Yeah, and total side tangent on that tip. I don't know, it was not very long ago that I realized when I load a recipe page, because I've been doing this for such a long time, that there is usually a button at the top that says jump to recipe. I can't tell you how many, I didn't ever notice that before. And so I'm always scrolling. And every time I'm scrolling, new elements are appearing. I'm like, hit the X to get rid of it and everything. And it's such a nightmare. And now that I know that there's just a jump to recipe button, I hit that. It takes me right to where I wanted to go. I'm like, how did I not know this existed before? But apparently it does. So there's a little tip if you've experienced that. Dean wrote in to say, I'm Android, but some of my family has crossed over to iOS. Apple has AirDrop, while Samsung has Quick Share. And now all Android has Nearby Share. I have played with the app Send Anywhere to share cross-platform. It seems to work well. Have you used it before? Is there a different quick transfer solution you can share? I haven't used Send Anywhere, but personally, I haven't. I don't know. Have either of you used that, or have you used the Nearby Share extensively? I've used Nearby Share a little bit, but
I actually made a screen cap for this because I thought it was mine. My story. So I actually made I downloaded Share Anywhere, and it actually worked fairly well. Yeah. So mine is Nearby Share, which works for, Android phone to Android phone. I would generally, I think for sharing phones between, say, my MacBook. Yes, I don't use a MacBook. A lot of Android developers use a MacBook. That's like a company, like an industry secret. But when I'm transferring files between, like, say, my MacBook and my Android, I'll usually use like a Dropbox solution. But going from like one to the other gets a little bit frictiony, especially for phone, because you have to kind of export the file to get it on your device and yada, yada. So I actually tried Send Anywhere, and it worked very well. So you have to specifically initiate the send, and so you select an image. We can hit. I'll try to narrate the video as we
go ahead and hit play on that.
Sorry, didn't know it was a video.
That's all right.
The video.
It's got that play button in the middle,
right there.
It's tantalizing us there we go.
So you specifically kind of select images to share, and when you get ready to send, it actually will have a link, including a kind of confirmation code and or a QR code. So whichever, depending on what device you want to share to, you can either scan the QR code on the desktop there, which was a little bit quick, and I wasn't fast enough to narrate it, but I entered in a 6-digit code onto my Mac, which basically found kind of like the kind of share in the cloud, and then started downloading the image from my Pixel 6 Pro, which is on the left, which if you're audio only, you can't see, but it actually started sharing from my Pixel 6 Pro to my MacBook. So yeah, it actually worked really well. And I think for a free tool, it's awesome. It is a lot of ads. I didn't look whether there was like a premium subscription, but I think it's a really good solution. And I like that it's so robust with, being very intentional about sending and receiving, because that always makes me a little bit nervous with like share options. But I think it's pretty slick between like the QR code or like the kind of like 6-digit share, which is not unlike, when you pair Bluetooth things together, or even just sharing a simple hyperlink. It's a pretty slick service for sharing files between different platforms without, having like wildly, disparate experiences between the different platforms or anything else. It's pretty dang good. Thank you, Dean. I like it.
Yeah, right on. Have you, Duncan, had much interaction with Nearby Share as a feature set that's kind of become a thing in Android in the last year or so?
I have. I do use it. My number one use actually got a hell of a lot easier last month because I share it to myself the most, and I had to go through devices to turn it on. And so I was very excited that sharing to yourself now is much easier without having to activate the feature, because I use it a lot to move devices between phones, tablets, Chromebooks, and so forth. So that was great. I have used it a little bit to share with other people, but for me, it's the normal tech thing of what am I sharing and what's the best way to send it. So most things I share, I'll send to people on Telegram. It still gets to their device, and as long as compression or it's not too big a file, I'll send it that way. If it's a video or a photo, I'll send them a Google Photos album, and then they get that link and can do whatever they want. And so because these things aren't interoperable and don't work as well as they can, you've sort of got this decision-making matrix of what am I sending, who am I sending it to, and what's the cleanest way of getting it to them. Because walking someone else through using Nearby Share is a nightmare. I'd take the phone off someone if I'm doing that and go, right, just give me your phone, unlock it for a minute.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. Right on. Before I toss it over to you, Wen, I want to give. Okay, today I'm making the decision right now. Today we have not one, but we have 2 emails of the week. So I'm going to do one real quick because it's super quick and it's not an email. It's from the chat room.
Oh.
But it's going to qualify anyways, because we were talking about that whole recipe thing and how recipes get buried and it's really hard to find the recipe. And then the chat room mentioned, so we got Cousin of Ja in Discord mentioned this, and I'm trying to find the originator of this in the IRC because someone put in, I guess it's Cousin of Ja. So Cousin of Ja, you are like the honorary also email of the week this week because pointed us to something called Recipe Filter, which is you can find in the Chrome Web Store and you can find it on Firefox. And essentially, it's an extension that when you go to a recipe site, it will find the recipe and pop it up for you in a pop-up instead of you having to search through the site to find the thing. So there you go. If this has ever been a pain point for you, Cousin of Ja has you covered. And you get the horns. So congratulations, Cousin of Ja. We've never had that before, not from the chat room. So that's it.
Breaking email. Breaking
yes,
email.
Exactly. All right. There we go. We could just wrap them all up into the same thing. Yes. Perfect.
Breaking email of the week.
Breaking email.
All right, Wynn. Now you you have the official honors.
So our email, our official email of the week comes from Jason from Chicago. And about a year ago, I used Google's password manager in Chrome and went through and changed all my simple passwords to complex ones and saved them in Chrome. I then committed a long, unique password to memory for my Google account. I also turned on two-factor using an app for a code for any account that allows it as an option. Here's the annoyance. It often seems like Android and Google's password manager in Chrome do not cross-communicate. When I try to log into an app or website on my phone, sometimes it automatically provides my login information, and sometimes I have to open the Chrome browser, go to the password manager website and copy and paste. Or if I create an account on my phone, sometimes it doesn't say the login and password I created in the password manager. I try to get my wife and parents to do the same, but I know when they run into this issue, they're just going to give up and start using generic passwords again. I bring this up just to say that Google wants us to be more secure and help us be more secure. They need to work out some of these bugs and make it a bit easier on us. Amen. Amen, Jason.
I've certainly experienced that.
Yeah. And this is just like what you just said, Duncan, about how if something is not completely, easy to use and user friendly, that you just find yourself, doing things for folks or having them not use the thing that is probably ultimately better. And again, this is going back to kind of our passkey story where, yes, this is what hopefully maybe passkeys could help. But yeah. I've experienced this too so many times where I hope that, and I don't know what it is. Like, I'm not really a web developer, so I'm kind of curious, or a security person by any means. So I'm kind of curious why some sites tend to evade the convenience of the built-in password managers.
I've found a solution for some of them. So I experienced this as well. And for some, especially when it's an app to the website, the app doesn't declare itself to be the same domain as the website. And I found this out actually by using LastPass, and I found that when I resaved my credentials, both the listings were in there. When I went in, it seemed to be that top-level domain was different. And so LastPass actually had a way that I can't remember that I was able to merge those two records and basically say this and this are the same thing. And for those, they seem to say in lockstep, whereas Google's doesn't. And if you check the URL of the multiple listings, you might actually find that that's what's going on. I'm sure there's other reasons as well. I've had issues with syncing where something I've done recently hasn't come through, or I haven't updated a sign-in on a browser, and so it's not syncing at all. But the number one cause I have found is that the domains are actually different. Now, if you're having website to website, domain to domain, then everything, no idea about that.
Yeah, I've noticed that too,
That's actually a really brilliant point. That's a really brilliant point. And I was kind of thinking to myself just now, who would not have the same domain? But actually, for Trello, where I work, we have Trello.com, but authentication is done through Atlassian. So I'm sitting here thinking, who would never have matching domains? And I'm I work at a company where the authentication is through Atlassian.com. And And there we go. I'm my own example. Thank you very much for clarifying that. So that's actually a really good point. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That really probably happens more than you think. Just because I'm sure a lot of companies have not dissimilar situations where maybe they have multiple products under the same banner and things like that. So that's an excellent point. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I've noticed it a lot with companies that also do third-party authentication. So not being a developer, there must be companies that do that. And you go to what looks to be a really strange URL, but it has the company appended at the end, and then it takes you back to where you're expecting to be. And so I've always just assumed they were using a third-party sign-on provider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, the other thing that happens to me, because I have LastPass is what I use to manage my passwords on my Android device. And there are times where I'll do an app or go to a web page that I know LastPass has recognized before and nothing appears. Like I click into the field and nothing pops up. And I've learned at this point that when that happens and I know it should be happening, I go out to my home screen, I tap on LastPass, and really just like authenticating with my thumbprint is all, or however you authenticate. It's like I had to wake up the app again or something. And then the next time when I go back over there, then it's like, oh yeah, here's everything I should have shown you, which I don't know why it does that. I don't know why it's almost like it times out, but it doesn't time out for everything. Sometimes even when that's happening with one site, I can go to a different site or a different app and it will appear there. So I don't know. Sometimes it's just confused and I don't understand why, but we figure out our hacks around it.
My LastPass hack is I always have in the notification shade LastPass. So if that happens, you open it up, hit LastPass. Sometimes that will force it to happen. If it doesn't, if you long press on the notification LastPass, it drops down copy username, copy password. And then you can just go copy paste.
There you go. That's a tip.
He says,
love it.
Make sure that functionality hasn't changed.
Yeah. Right on. Well, thank you, Jason, other Jason from Chicago, for writing in and being our email of the week. There we go. All right. We have reached the end of this episode. My voice is still sort of intact and my battery is not totally depleted. So it's a success. Thank you so much for hopping on with us today, Duncan. It's been a lot of fun having you back on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I always love coming on, and it's been an absolute pleasure doing the show for the first time with you, Win. Thank you so much.
Right back at you, Duncan.
Duncan, tell people what you want them to know. Obviously, Osdroid.net, if you're working on anything, or this is your opportunity to plug whatever you got, if you got anything to plug.
Osdroid.net's where you find the team's work. I have to admit, everyone else does the majority of the lifting, and we are heavily into an embargo season right now. So I have no idea what I can and can't say, so I'll do the prudent thing and say nothing.
There you go. Just go to Osdroid.net and you'll find out in a matter of weeks or a month or however long what Duncan is talking about.
Or maybe 15 hours. Who knows?
Or that's true. That's true. Maybe go there tomorrow and see what happens. See what magically appears. Thank you again, Duncan. Always a pleasure. And then what about you, Win? What do you want to leave people with?
Yeah. So actually this week is kind of a fun week for me because I did do an episode of not this Android show, but another Android show, which I did with my good friend and friend of the show, Florina Muntenescu, for Google will be kind of like a runner up to the Fireside Chat. So even if you aren't a dev, you might find it interesting, but especially if you are a developer and you have questions for the Android team, please tweet them using hashtag #AskAndroid, because I think the Fireside Chat for devs has been traditionally one of our favorite bits. It's a panel of some of the most, experienced and good answering having people on the Android team. And it's always a really good time. Chet Haas, who is a longtime Android, one of the longtime Android leads. He's led different teams in dev advocacy at Android, and also a stand-up comedian is emceeing this year. So that's definitely something to check out if you're interested in the development side of it at all. And if you're on the live stream, maybe I might show up on the live stream a little bit with Florina doing some goofy stuff.
Nice.
But other than that, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Queen Code Monkey, and you can find actual technical content on my website, randomlytyping.com.
Right on. Have fun for all of us there at Google I/O. And
I'll try. I'll bring it back for y'all. Bring the fun back for y'all.
There we go. Appreciate that. Big thanks to Burke at the studio for pushing the buttons, doing that crossfade that you just saw right there if you're watching the video. Yeah, Burke did that. He also pushed the button that made the applause. Yeah, he's doing all these things. It's kind of crazy. Thank you, Burke. Thank you, Victor, behind the scenes for editing the show, publishing it, making sure that you get it into your podcatcher of choice or on YouTube after the fact. You wouldn't see it without Victor. So thank you, Victor, for all that you do. Oh, geez, that's not nice. Jeez. Okay, Victor, have words with Burke after the show. You can find me at Jason Howell on Twitter. If you want to watch me podcasting from this wonderful room the rest of this week, tomorrow morning, of course, I'll be doing live coverage of Google I/O with Leo and Jeff Jarvis at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, twit.tv/live. So check that out. And then, of course, Tech News Weekly on Thursdays, twit.tv/TNW. I do that show with Micah Sargent, and we have a great time. So that's my my live podcasting for the week. Don't forget Club Twit, twit.tv/Club Twit. It's our ad-free subscription tier. You get all of our shows with no ads. If you don't want ads in your show, that you wouldn't even get this ad, by the way, then that's where you want to go. You also get exclusive Twit Plus podcast feed content, tons of extra content. We're putting, like the Stacy's Book Club and Ant's interviewing, I think, Padre this week, Father Robert Balacer. Just there's always some really cool stuff hitting the feed. And then finally, a members only Discord that you have access to. $7 a month or $84 for the year if you like to pay for the full year. Twit.tv/Club Twit. As for this show, twit.tv/AAA. That's the show page on the web where you can go to find everything you need to know about All About Android, ways to subscribe, all that stuff, photos of us, whatever you want to find. Episodes are also there. Twit.tv/AAA. That is it for this week's episode of All About Android. I'm going to go drink some tea with some honey dipped in it, and we'll see you next time on All About Android. Bye, everybody.
Did you spend a lot of money on your brand new smartphone and then you look at the pictures on Facebook and Instagram and you're like, what in the world happened to that photo? Yes. You have, I know. It happens to all of us. Well, you need to check out my show, Hands-On Photography, where I'm going to walk you through simple tips and tricks that are going to help make you get the most out of your smartphone camera or your DSLR or mirrorless, whatever you have, and those shots are going to look so much better. I promise you. So make sure you're tuned in to twit.tv/hop for Hands-On Photography to find out more.